What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. LexxExpress checking in with my thoughts on Extreme Rules. Now, I started with the screenshot of Bray Wyatt appearing at the very end of the show because that's what everyone is talking about. But I want to start from the very beginning of the night, which kicked things off into high gear with the Brawling Brutes versus Imperium. Yeah, I know, I botched it. But it was Sheamus's group versus Gunther's group. And I absolutely love that hard-hitting match. If you guys want to see more details into how I reacted, I had a full stream of the entire show from beginning to end. It's up on the channel. These hangouts are, amazing. I loved it, had a blast. And yes, back to the review. Brawling Brutes, Imperium, that match was just so hard-hitting. And it had, some real good spots with the shillelagh. Sheamus even hit Gunther in the head, which we don't really see headshots anymore, right? So it was cool to see him, go for the head there towards the end of the match. I love the high-flying spots with Pete Dunne, a.k.a. Butch, the power that Ridge Holland showed, and everyone in Imperium too, like Vinci, and what's the other guy? Ludwig, I think is his name. Point is, they set the tone for the rest of the night. It was just really well put together. And if Extreme Rules is just a small sample size of what Triple H is going to do with all these, pay-per-views that we already know and loved, because at some point in time, we all loved Extreme Rules because the matches had great stipulations and stuff. That's not the case anymore. We don't really see stipulation matches in these stipulation pay-per-views, right? When Vince McMahon was running Extreme Rules into the ground, he was only putting like maybe 2 Extreme Rules matches or 3 at best. So they kind of shied away from playing into what the pay-per-view was all about, which was going extreme and showcasing some of the weapons that they have under the ring. And I feel like this pay-per-view, again, with the first match of the night, they just kicked it off into high gear and never looked back. And then we also, now I'm not going to follow the order, but I have here a list of the matches that took place. So we had Liv Morgan versus Rhonda. That match was pretty solid. I actually went back and watched it because while it was happening, I went to go cook some dinner, or finish dinner, should I say. And I ended up finishing it and going back to see it. So it had too many botches. Liv Morgan is just not a believable champion in my opinion. I know a lot of people like her, and they were trying to do the fan service with her, but I just don't care for Liv Morgan. She's not believable, and it just was what it was. Rhonda whooped her ass, and I'm glad she did. That's just my opinion. Don't get mad at me for it, but hey, she's solid, but she doesn't need the belt. I'm talking about Liv. And Rhonda, yeah, she doesn't need the belt, but I'd rather Rhonda have it than Liv, in my opinion. That's just the way I feel. So, yeah, we'll just skip on over to the next match here. Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross. That match actually could have been so much more. I feel like they played it so safe, almost too safe. And then at the very end, the pepper spray by Scarlett, that was a little annoying. Not the greatest finish, in my opinion. But obviously, Karrion Kross needed a cheat to win. He wasn't just going to, beat Drew in a clean fashion. So it was all right. They went into the barricade area, and Karrion Kross didn't want to put on the strap immediately, but I just felt like they overextended that corner move that Karrion kept pulling in Drew and hitting his shoulder on the outside of the ring. I thought that was overly done, and it was just unbelievable that a tank like Drew McIntyre was getting tugged into the turnbuckle like that. So that was like my biggest problem with that match. But again, still enjoyable. Whether the Liv Morgan and Rhonda match had botches, whether the match could have been better between Karrion Kross and Drew McIntyre, the theme for the night was that the matches were still enjoyable for what they were. We also had Bianca Belair and Bayley. They left it all out in the ring. They had some spots that were, I was like when she, Bianca carried both women, Io Sky and Dakota Kai at the same time. I was just like, they took too long to set that up, and she obviously couldn't get it going with the weight distribution and stuff like that. It felt too coordinated, and that's the issue with some of these matches that involve, these kind of spots. So Other than that, that match was spectacular. The ladder match was really, really good. The finish, the KOD finish was just spot on, amazing. The way that Bayley fell on the ladder and she did the whole flip, it was just outstanding. And, you know, for everything that I felt could have been a little different, they always made up for it throughout the night. Emotionally, I was invested, and I really thoroughly enjoyed just the pacing of the show overall. It felt like it was just nonstop action, stipulation after stipulation. It really lived up to the Extreme Rules hype. And I felt like they needed to, you know, really kick things off with the Triple H era now in an extreme way. No pun intended, or pun intended, I guess. But I just feel like they needed to set the tone for these stipulation pay-per-views, and they did it perfectly with this one. And then we had Edge versus Finn Balor. That match was freaking awesome. The family ties. We knew Beth Phoenix was going to have to get involved. We knew Rey Mysterio was going to have to come out at some point. And the way that they did it was cool. Just that the ending, having Edge say I quit for Beth Phoenix, it was just too predictable. I was in the stream with my boy Brian. We were watching the show together, and he called it before the match even started. He said, I just don't want Edge to you know, quit because of Beth Phoenix, and I think that's where they're headed. And that's exactly where they went. These I Quit matches are really tough to produce, in my opinion, because it always ends up with a family member or someone else getting involved and pushing the boundaries and forcing that person to say I quit when they don't really want to quit. So it's always kind of the same thing, in my opinion. And then we have the Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins match. That match felt rushed. I feel like they didn't have enough high-flying moments. I feel like Seth wasn't at his best, even though they did have their first. This was their second match, so their first encounter and the build-up to this match was just spectacular. Nothing short of spectacular. And I feel like for how good these guys are, I thought that it could have been much, much better. But obviously, they plugged in this match in there and had some decent moments where ultimately I was like, all right, I see what they were going for. But it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet. It just felt really rushed. The ending and them rushing up the stage, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? They did the copyright logo, so the show was about to end. And then, of course, Bray Wyatt had his moment where the crowd was just soaking it in. The crowd exploded. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful. One of the best returns for sure. I was all into it. I got super emotional. I was super hyped. We're going to do a separate video talking about that. But overall, I understand why they went with the Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins match to end the way it did, and the pacing of it for it to have been rushed the way it did, because they wanted to get to that Bray Wyatt moment. I just feel that, you know, for all the build-up with the White Rabbit and all the build-up for the Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins encounter, they should have, you know, spread it out a little bit better. But like I said, today, I'm here to say that I really, really loved Extreme Rules. I thought it was a lot of fun. And ultimately, it comes down to this. Did it deliver on the theme of the show? And it sure as hell did. It sure as hell did. Like I said in the stream, Triple H has gone back to what we all know and love. And that's playing into what makes wrestling something that we are all passionately about. It's the stories and the stipulations and the scenarios and circumstances that only wrestling can put you in. And it just, they knocked it out the park in terms of an entire production and how it was executed overall. Could they have done a couple things here and there differently? Sure, I'll admit. For sure. It depends what Kool-Aid flavor you like to drink. There's things that you're like, whatever. But ultimately, was it entertaining? Yes, it was. And not that Vince couldn't produce entertaining shows, because I still think that he did one of the greatest WrestleManias I've ever witnessed this past year. And he's constantly, you know, he was constantly messing up, but making up for it at some point in time. Whereas in Triple H, since he's been in control, it's been pretty much all positive. Can you tweak a couple things? No one's perfect. But Extreme Rules was exactly what it needed to be. It hit home. Now I'm excited for Monday Night Raw. I wanted to put this video out there before the week started, and then I forgot about doing it. Obviously, I was so emotionally freaking exhausted. We did a 6-hour stream, and I just had a blast. So if you guys love the watch parties, I'll see you back at the next pay-per-view, which is Crown Jewel. And then we're also going to have AEW Full Gear, I think, in November. And then we're also going to have Survivor Series. So subscribe to the channel for more wrestling, more reviews, more reaction, more thoughts, and discussion. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.